Yo, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about how I made Take Me Away with Amadeus and Monica Santucci. Let's get right into it. So first of all, big shout out from Chris from Sound Horizon Academy for helping me with this track. The production and where this track is today would not be where it is today without his help. Secondly, big shout out to Brody from Caslo for helping me mix and master this track and adding some last final touches. Okay, so the future bass intro I'm actually going to skip because I've already went through this on another video. I'll leave a link in the description below in case you wanted to check out that video on how I made this future bass intro. But nonetheless, the verse has more or less same elements as the future bass intro, but just some added things just to add some more variation in the verse. So first and foremost, there's just the vocal layer that you hear, and then secondly, here are the percussions. For the first part, there's just a rim shot snare from the Brighter Day sample pack, and it's just a phony cue, reverb, and then a delay. And then for like the verse 1B part, that's when I kind of opened up the phony cue just a little bit. See there, just a little bit of automation, and then kind of dialing back the dry wet. The reason why there was more dry wet was because it's just kind of empty here, and the delay was kind of filling out that space due to that emptiness from the percussion elements. And then just layering up the rim shot snare a little bit. I think this is like a trap snare with like some tonal to it, and then a clap. So that's usually what you want to do. Add some more extra variation from verse 1B is you can layer up your snares, and then also adding that kick. Got to do the classic reverse kick like a Linium, of course. Brighter Day's kick there, and then also adding these percussive elements like shakers, some colorful glitches, and some other like Brighter Day kind of Foley sounds, I think it was, and a little bit of a transition for the reverb clap here. Now I've been hearing a lot of tracks, and I think most people like do like 1 or 2 loops, and generally you kind of want to fill out the frequency spectrum a little bit more and make it a little bit more interesting, because I think most people just kind of have like 1 loop going and it kind of just sounds like this. Now there's nothing wrong with that, but just to kind of take it up to a more professional level, this is where I would recommend to add like some shakers, some brides, some hi-hats, something just to fill it out a little bit. So I'll kind of show you an example here. Instead of staying and getting stuck in my... Like, it sounds really cool, but once we start adding the shakers and we start adding these like Brighter Day kind of Foley elements, that's when we start filling it up a little bit more and adding some extra interest to the track as well, and some variation. Instead of staying and getting stuck in my mind. And then, yeah, you also want to add this variation, because if we don't add the variation to the next part, it's not going to keep the listener engaged to the song. So, like, imagine if we just muted everything else. Very first time. Instead of staying and getting stuck in... Yeah, it's just not engaging enough and doesn't keep the listener interested. So this is why, in general, if you want to kind of stick with this type of arrangement, it's best to add some variation on that verse 1B part so the listener can stay interested in your track. Also, as you notice here, there's some reverse claps here, and then a little bit variation on the next beat with another clap here. Just another way to add a little bit more interest in your tracks. Alright, now for the verse layers, I have a Echo Soundworks plucking guitar, or chug, and then a chordal guitar recorded by Nat from Venteria, and then a keyscape piano. This is the cinematic preset. Again, if you want to like just check out all these instruments, you're welcome to check out the future bass intro video. And then this is just a Serum respace, really simple here. And then this is a guitar that's not being used. Speaking of guitars, if you are interested in getting these future bass style or melodic bass style guitars, I actually have a sample pack available. And if you want guitars that sound just like this, you can check out my guitar sample pack on my Gumroad page. That also has a great review from Dylan. Big shout out to him for giving me that positive feedback on this guitar sample pack. But yeah, if you wanted to grab the sample pack, feel free to check out the link in the description below on my Gumroad page. And the next layers are 2 pads from Atmospheres. And then this is just actually a sub bass from Virtual Riot's like sample pack on Splice called Dedicated Sub, and then I just added a kick tight on the sub and then just converted it to audio. Okay, and then next layers are the Atmospheres here. Now this was not intentional on my track, as you may have saw on my Future Bass intro video. The Atmospheres were supposed to be panned left and right, not both to the right, and I think I ended up releasing the track with both panned to the right. So that shows you, like, you know, those small details that we're so focused on. A lot of times the average, especially the average listener, they might not even pay it, like they might not even freaking notice it. So it just shows you that, like, these very small details that we try to perfect don't really matter as much as we think they do. So yeah, these 2 Atmospheres, I'm gonna be honest, these 2 Atmospheres Amadeus made, so I'm not too sure what he made it from. But to kind of make it more atmospheric, he basically did an OTT and a Valhalla shimmer to make it more atmospheric. And I think he did the same thing here, and I just cut out the lows and some resonant frequencies to make space for the vocal, essentially.
Feels like I'm just waking up from dreaming for the very...
And then just a cashmere vinyl crackle, getting rid of some of the lows and the highs as well. And just keep in mind, all of these elements are kind of complementing each other. So like if I don't have the Atmospheres, for example, or if I don't have the pads, then my track is going to sound a little empty. So I'll kind of play it in context. So no Atmospheres.
Feels like I'm just waking up from dreaming for the very first time.
And this is like with no pads.
Feels like I'm just waking up from dreaming for the very first time.
So all of these sounds are selected so they can kind of complement each other and essentially just fill out the frequency spectrum. And you're going to notice a reoccurring theme, especially if you watch all my videos, that the same like basic layering kind of foundation is usually what I do throughout my whole entire track, to all the way to the drops, to make that huge wall of sound drops. And I think once you have that like basic foundation of knowing how to layer your sounds, how to have them fit right in the mix and all that, I think you're going to be able to make some really pro sounding tracks. And here's a really cool feel here that you can try using to transfer over to your pre-chorus. All I really did was just cut out all the audio, and then I filled in the space with a sub drop, and I think it was kind of like a sweep just to fill in the space or frequency spectrum a little bit. So there's a sub drop from Kashmir, there's a sweep down, and then this is just like some effect that Amadeus made, and this like cool notation thing as well. And then also some like a little bit of another sweep in, and then here are the reverse effects. Alright, so first we can go check out the vocal stack, and as you can tell here, this vocal it says dry, but it's not exactly completely dry where it's like raw, where it's like there's no processing at all. You can tell there's some compression, as it's, you know, despite some of these peaks, more or less most of the volume is already controlled. And it's already auto-tuned as well, so that's something to keep in mind. Most of the time when you get a pro vocalist that will record your vocals, usually in general you can expect something that's tuned, on time, and compressed as well, where you don't have to do too much work. And a lot of times for the more amateur vocals, you'll see that you have to do a little bit more work to get the vocals right, to sit right in the mix. But yeah, this one, Monaco Santucci, is obviously a pro, so it already came processed just with no reverb and delays. So that's where I added the reverb and delays here on the dry wet 100%, because you're essentially just mixing in the dry signal. So you're gonna, you know, if you don't have 100%, it's just gonna phase with the main vocal. Some low end, taking out the low end of the reverb. I'll kind of show you here. And then if we take these off, yeah, and that's just from the reverb. So if we have that in context of a full sounding mix with all your other elements, some of that low end might get a little muddy there. So that's the reason for these EQs here. And then same thing with the delay as well. Same idea with the dry wet being at 100%, and same thing with the body. This utility is just essentially just to mute the reverb tails at the pre-drop fill, and then to hit the drop so the reverb doesn't really spill into the drop. I'm not going to be able to really open this processing because I'm going to lose the processing because it was made on my MacBook. But essentially all I really did was just doing some dynamic EQs to get rid of any like resonant frequencies, probably like some lower end body frequencies I did, some mid heavy frequencies, and maybe a little bit of highs, 2K range depending as well. Something that actually Brody did too was did dynamic EQ on more of that like lower body range of the vocal as well, because it was kind of body heavy. So and that was on the final mix down. These are just vocoders using vocal synth. So all I really did was I just took vocal synth, and I think this was just like honestly the default preset when I opened vocal synth, and I thought it sounded really cool. So I did that. I just kind of adjusted the gate, and then I just kind of copied the same exact notes of my chord progression, and then just mapped this to the vocal synth. The second vocoder, same idea, just choose a different preset this time so they can layer well together. This is just some other layers that Monica Santucci had. I think it's like a lower layer. Yep. Again, speaking with like vocalists recording vocals for you, you can also expect these type of harmonies layers as well. Sometimes you get ad libs. Really depends on maybe the packages that you purchase with those vocalists. So definitely discuss with them on what you want for your track, and you guys can work out a deal with each other. But yeah, usually like for the chorus or the build-up, this is like almost like your biggest moment of the song aside from the drop. So this is why you can see that there's a lot of layers in the vocal layers to kind of fill up that frequency spectrum. And as you can see here, the vocoders are actually also filling out that space as well. So again, everything is just working together in context of the mix. And then of course, you don't want your build-up to be the biggest part, especially in volume as well. So you're gonna have to like gain stage it so like it's more balanced, and then once the drop hits, that's gonna be your biggest moment of the drop for dynamic contrast for the listener. And then yeah, honestly, I just brought over all the same elements and then just added more to this build-up part. The only thing that I changed was I took out the serum bass and just changed it for some other basses. So I still have the same elements, but now I have a pluck from Amadeus. He made something in Vital here, and then the same pads here. This is the same sub bass, but then I changed the bass to the Electric Sunburst guitar bass, as you see here. And then I think on the other version I actually automated the amp, this Van 51 here, and probably what I did was I started it low and then just had the distortion drive up during the build up, just to add a little bit more of that energy and like build up effect. And then just cutting out some of the highs and the lows, of course. And then this is actually just another bass just to fill in that frequency spectrum a little bit more. More of that lower end frequency spectrum. This is just the Rickenbacker bass guitar or something like that. Yeah. And then you can also do something similar with the automation. I think it was you can automate the preamp. Yeah, same idea. I'm pretty sure on the other project that's frozen and flattened on the audios, I did the same thing with the preamp there, and then just automate all the way. Well, probably not all the way because it sounded pretty distorted, but I automated to a point where it wasn't too distorted, but at the same time not too less distorted. Kind of find that balance between that distortion. And then also playing in context to make sure it sits right in the mix. This is just a saturator to bring up some more frequencies. And same idea here, just cutting out the lows and then some of the highs. And then I think what I did was, yeah, I kind of played with the velocity. I don't think I did it here. I think I might have did it manually, to be honest with you, but you can honestly just randomize it like this, and then there you go. Now you have a randomized velocity, just to kind of like recreate how a actual guitar player will play this bass. And then for the drums, I just have some kicks, snares, and claps. Just using the, pretty sure, Brighter Days 37. Yep, Brighter Days Kick 37. This is just a Cashmere clap. Automating the dry wet to go up. And then just making sure to mute it at the end there. The reverb was, I think, was just like 40% dry wet, if I remember correctly, and like 1 second decay, because it sounded a little bit dry, to be honest. Same thing with this clap. Same idea with the reverb and taking out the lows there. I think this snare, honestly, is the Brighter Days 07 snare. Yeah. This is just some OTT to bring up some of those frequencies, cutting out the lows with the EQ. And then this case was just a fab filter just to cut out some of those highs. I just made a dynamic EQ on the highs just to calm it down, because with the OTT, it was bringing up a lot of highs. But I actually wanted to bring up those frequencies. Just the highs need to be tamed a little bit. The shifter here is what's making it kind of like change the pitch as the build-up's going up. And then here I teased some of the melody elements. This is just some EQs, just to make some space for the vocal, especially when you have this vocal chop in, coming in, creeping in with the auto filter. It could be a little bit mid-heavy in the mix, so that's why I have this EQ here to be on during the build-up, but once the drop drops, it turns off. Yeah, you can kind of hear those like mids of the vocal chops are kind of fighting a little bit for space with the main vocal there. And then I think I probably like teased some arps as well. Yep. Tease some of the arps from the build-up, sorry, from the drop, basically so there can be some cohesiveness from build-up to drop. But I didn't tease all the arps, I just teased some of them, because again, you want the drop to be the biggest part or section of your track. And for the effects, I have this impact just so you can kind of transition over to a bigger section of the song. A sweep down, a massive riser, and then another sweep up, and then this is a sub riser, sorry, it's sub drop, and then it becomes a sub riser as I'm automating it to go up. This is from the pitch bend wheel. And then for the pre-drop fill is the same idea, how I layer all my fills, and again it's just filling out the frequency spectrum once again. So I have a sub drop covering the low end. I think this is going to be a reverse synth effects, and then just a decapitator to distort the reverse effects a little bit more. This is just the drop snare reversed, and then this is just the drop snare. A little bit of white noise as well. I think even on the final version I probably added like a glitch effects too, which just fills in that high-end frequency a little bit more. And then, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going to work. Yep. Again, that's just filling out the high-end frequency spectrum of your fill. And then here's the drop fill that comes in. Same fundamentals here. I have this exhaust filling out the high end. And then, yeah, with the auto pan, all I really did was suggest the amount and rate. Sometimes I'll even play with the phase a little bit and automate the phase so it can play with the left and right side of the volume or the audio, as you can see here. And then same thing with the glitch effect, covering that high end. And then reverse synth effects again. This is Chris's bass from Sound Horizon Academy. This is just like from the free sample pack he sent out some time ago. And then I just play with some distortions to see which one I like the most. I just found I like the saturator the most, so I just use that. And then OTT, Tried a little bit of erosion, but it sounded just fine with OTT and saturator, so I just kept it like that. Just kind of show you what it does here. Just brings up those frequencies essentially. Of course, you want to sidechain the fill as well, otherwise the kick will clash with your fill. So there's also a tape stop automation. Yep. And all I really did was just kind of play with the play there, this button here, and then just had it go down to 0 to give that winding effect. All right, so now I have the percussions. Just a really punchy kick. Add actually a little bit of a top kick as well to fill out a little bit more transient. Yep. And then for the snare, I used a silent snare for body, a AU5 snare, another AU5 snare. This one's for the tail end, I believe, and then I just cut out some of those transients, otherwise it'll clash. Yep. And then exhaust to fill out some of that high end. There's supposed to actually be a plucky element here. That's what's giving it that like tonal aspect. The processing is just a glue compressor, drum bus, and then just boosting up the fundamental of the track or the snare. And then these are just some percussive elements that are essentially just adding rhythm and also filling out the track's frequency spectrum. These are just as important as any other layer in your drop. So I'll kind of show you without them. So you kind of lost the rhythmic element of your track as well as some high end as well. And something I also like to show is that not only do you want like a pleasing melody in your drop and also a nice sounding mix, but also another thing that you want to think about is having rhythmic interest in your track as well, because at the end of the day, people have to be able to dance with the fucking track, you know? So if I were to just show you, for example, like the kick, snare, and some atmospheres, there should already be some interest in there already. So I think that's what makes a really good drop, is that you have the mix down right. The volumes aren't just like all over the place. The kick and snare are popping through the mix, and there's no frequency clashing. There's no like muddiness, and also the melodies and the chords are written really well as the drop sounds full, and you have that rhythmic interest as well. Also guys, I'm actually selling this project file on my Gumroad page, so if you want the whole entire project file with the presets, it includes the freaking vocals, and you just want to see how I made this track with the mix and master as well. Keep in mind this master was the first master. Again, Brody did the final master. Also, if you wanted to remix the track, of course not make it original, but you're welcome to remix the track as well and to use those vocals for a remix. But yeah, if you want this project file, definitely check out the Gumroad page. I'm actually offering a 25% discount code for the first 25 people that buy this project file, so definitely get it while you still can before those discount codes run out. Again, link in the description below. So going to the vocal chop layers, I have the main vocal chop. This was just chopped up from Monica Santucci's main vocal, and I've also done videos in the past already of how I process these vocal chops. So it's the same exact processing. Little altar boy, just basically put the pitch up an octave, played with the formants to taste, and added reverb. And then there's a distortion after the reverb, so you can distort the reverb. A little bit less on the mix this time because I wanted to go for more of like a William Black style vocal chop where it was a little bit more dry than wet, so less on the mix there. OTT, EQ, just to get rid of some of the lows and the highs, and then another reverb just so I can have a reverb that's not distorted essentially. Same idea with the low mix, just for a more drier reverb, or sorry, drier vocal chop. This vocal chop here is just a reverbed out vocal chop. So it's just using Valhalla Shimmer to reverb out the vocal chop. It's just the same idea as like if you again watch my previous tutorials, that Nexus Orchid Drops preset literally does the same idea. It just really makes a wider sounding kind of lead. So I'll kind of show you. So just to quickly show you what I did, I just added a Valhalla Shimmer, changed the reverb mode to big stereo, maybe played with the mix a little bit in context of your mix. Definitely the low cut, you don't need those lows in the reverb, and then maybe a little bit of feedback as well. I'll show you here. And then for sure like an EQ after the reverb, because there's gonna be a lot of lows that come in. And then the next layer is actually a square screechy lead layer. This essentially adds a little bit more mids to the vocal chop and basically has it punch through the mix a little bit more. So I'm going to show you without it. So what I did here was I just took the melody of the vocal chop and then just put it on my screech lead. Another way you can do this is, if you don't want to use the screech lead, there's other ways you can do this by just literally taking these notes and then just adding it in your saw stack, maybe 1 or 2 saw stacks, and then see it, how it sounds in context. And yeah, that's just another way for your vocal chops to have a little bbit more mids and just punch through the mix a little bit more. These are my arps here. This is Amedex's like remake of like a Man Cub synth guitar. This is just a patch at Omnisphere called Stabbing Mr. Cold 3, and then the RC20 is essentially just distorting it. Then yeah, just using the Crush Guitar Fuzz preset. Most likely adjusted some of these settings as well. Really can't remember, to be honest with you, at this point. And then EQ to cut out some of those lows. Keyscape Piano, I think I've showed this in countless tutorials, but it's the same cinematic preset. Maybe I tried distorting it as well just to see how it sounds. Can't really remember. And yeah, I just did some reverb there, cut out some of those lows. 60% OTT, some delay, and yeah, just some EQ again. This is like a higher end patch, I think it was. Yep, this is just some preset in Serum called Festival Bees. And then this is actually a sound from Said the Sky. If you guys watched the XLNT podcast with Said the Sky, I saw him making a track and use the sound. I was like, oh, it sounded really cool. So I just kind of yoinked it, to be honest with you, and then tried putting it in my own track, and it sounded really great as a layer for my arps. This is just a Social Outcast. And then I just put some reverb again, and distortion after the reverb once again to distort the reverb. And then a low cut, don't really need those lows. And a little bit more aggressive on the lows because it was kind of clashing in context of the mix. And this is another Said the Sky preset. This is the same exact preset he also showed on that podcast once again. I don't know what happened to my library, but it's also under the guitar section somewhere as well. Feel free to check out that podcast if you really want to get the sound, but same processing as well, just layered really well with this other ARP that I had. But yeah, all these ARPs are working together, and then without one of the ARPs, it's just not going to make the drop sounds full. I imagine if these were off as well. Auto pan here as well, just so the it won't be as mid heavy. So I'll kind of show you. You can kind of see the arps and the vocal chops are kind of like a little bit clashing in the mids. So this is just one way to free up space for the vocal chops. Next up is my saw stack. So this is just like a lineum saw here. It's the same saw. And then part B. And this is the radio tone saw that I always use as well. This is the ones where I changed up a little bit. I used the same Flaming Super Saw, but I kind of changed the octave as well as like it made it more pluck and then distorted even more. This RC20 is what really is adding that extra distortion. And then I used another preset I found on Omnisphere that sounded really cool. The Reface Polycomper, and then just some distortion after as well. I think this is Chris's Sound Horizon Academy chord. Yeah. Some sound delay to create the Haas effect and essentially just make it a little bit wider. And this is also like Chris's like higher octave saw as well. And again, same with these saws. If I turn off some of these saws, the drop is just not going to sound as full. So this is more like a mid-heavy saw. That mid frequency is entirely gone now. These are probably covering more of like that higher end range and also adding some more texture to the drop. Something to note as well, this is not like the all way to how to layer your drops, but if you really like, you know, full sounding huge stacks and full sounding drops, then this is kind of like the way to layer it. But if you wanted to do like more Said to Sky style, a lot of these same principles apply, but you might not have to like, you know, duke it out like how I'm doing essentially. So I think at that point it's more of going to be a creative choice on, you know, how big you want the drop and like what type of style you want your track to be in. Okay, next up is my mid basses. And I think it's pretty much the same layering. This is the Angry Boss preset with some EQs, vinyl distortion to create some movement, and I bring up those frequencies and then just any resonant frequencies and cutting out the lows after distortion. This is actually a fuzz-based preset in Serum. Just OTT, same vinyl distortion to bring up those frequencies and give it some movement as well. Same EQ there, don't need the highs either. And this is the same Cashmere Angry Boss preset. Tried out my sub first, or Virtual Ride sub. Didn't really fill out the low end as much as I wanted to, so opted for the Crank Dad sub from his Patreon. Some white noise here. And then some atmospheres. This is the same Echo Soundworks guitar chug. And again, all these elements are equally as important to fill out your drop. So if you don't have the atmospheres, your drop is just not going to sound as full as it should. Of course, you want to get rid of these lows. So let's just say, for example, we don't get rid of those lows. You're going to have a lot of clashing frequencies on that low end, especially for these atmospheres, because there is quite a bit of low end for these atmospheres. So it's also going to really depend on the sample that you have too. But for these samples in particular, a lot of lows. Yeah. It's just not a clean mix. And then of course you want to have the effects as well. This is just a sweep down, and then same thing with the lows there. And then to kind of create some variation, I actually changed the fill up for the second time around. Added these Cashmere hi-hats. This is just one really easy way to create variation for your track, but this is not the only way to add variation to your track. You can add the vocalist singing over the drop. You can do a little chord progression if it makes sense. And what I also did too was change the little alter boy pitch. Rather than being plus 12, it went to the 0 pitch of just being the regular octave. So that's another great way to add variation is, you know, you could potentially, for example, if your track started at a 0 pitch, for the next time around you can do plus 12 or vice versa, like what I did. I will show you how I transitioned from drop to verse. All I really did was I automated the CQ here, as you can see. I basically brought up the lows to about 160 or so, automated the Q as well, and did a little bit of volume automation as well, just because when you do the Q, it could bring up some of the volume a little bit. And then same thing with the highs, I EQ'd it down as well. On top of that, you kind of hear this washout effect is from this reverb here. 0 to 50%, and then just slowly dipping it down after. And then for the effects, there's like this vocal reverse here. Basically, the vocal that's going to come in, a sub drop again, a clean stop to transition the listener over to the verse. Also adds a little bit of low end as well. And just a sweep with some reverb as well. And then on top of that, I make sure I muted all my bass layers because the sub drop is essentially going to take over that section. And then I also muted some of the kick and snare as well, and some of those percussive elements. Just say, for example, if I didn't, this is exactly what would happen. It just doesn't transition over as smoothly, so hence why I decided to mute these layers. Yeah, and essentially all I really did for the second verse was I changed the rhythm back to the original feature bass type of like rhythm that you usually hear for variation. On top of that, during the next like 2B part, I added some extra hi-hats in the final version of the track. And then for the next chorus, I basically did a drop in energy just for some extra variation. So once you have the first part of your track done, you have more or less 80% of your track done, and more or less after that, it's just about finding variation so the listener can still stay engaged in your track, but not so different that it's like a completely new track that the listener doesn't even know what's going on. That's just honestly really how you finish a feature-based track. So again, if you want to get this whole entire project file, you get the vocals, and you're welcome to remix the vocals or remix the track if you like. And you just want to see how I produce this whole entire track and get all the presets as well as the mix and master chain, check out my Gumroad page. And then again, be sure to use that 25% discount code so you can get 25% off of this project file. You definitely want to hop on that right now, because once that discount code is over, I'm not really sure when I'll have the next sale for this project file. So definitely get it while you still can. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Hit the bell notification symbol so you know when the next video goes live. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and then join the Discord as well. We have a community of other producers in there, and we can all help each other and give each other feedback. So yeah, again, all the links will be in the description below. Thank you so much again for watching. Hope you enjoy this one. Until next time, much love. Peace out. Take me